Good morning. So I've always thought and felt that this morning, day 4 morning at a Move event, is a pretty critical moment for us. I don't know about you, but for me, it's kind of the first time I really feel like, oh man, we don't have a lot of time left. So we're like past the midway point, so I don't know, maybe this is a stupid metaphor, but it's like if we're climbing a mountain up one side and down the other, we have reached the peak, and now we're starting to make our downward descent. And it's easy when you're starting to make your downward descent to think that the primary work is done, but if you've ever climbed a mountain, you actually know that going downhill sometimes is harder than going up. And you've got to be very cautious and careful and intentional about how you engage the rest of the journey. And my encouragement to you and my prayer for you is that you engage the rest of the journey very intentionally so that we don't stop. I don't doubt that good things have happened, but I don't want us to stop creating space for God to do new good things. So with that in mind, I want to read the text for today that we're going to be unpacking. It's another one of Jesus' stories. Matthew chapter 20 is where you'll find this one. It's a little bit longer than some of the stories that we've been looking at together, certainly in the morning. And so we're going to kind of need to lean in and use your imagination as I read this story and try to picture what Jesus is describing. It's a story about workers, about people who want to find work because they need to get paid for the work so they can take care of their family. That's the kind of context of what's going on here. And I want to read it to you. Matthew chapter 20, verses 1 through 16. Jesus is the one talking. Here's what he says. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day and sent them into his vineyard. That's a pretty fair wage. So a denarius is an amount of money that would have been decent pay for a day's worth of work. It's a good deal. About 9 in the morning, he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. He told them, "You also go out and work in my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." He went out again about noon and at about 3 in the afternoon and did the same thing. About 5 in the afternoon, this is 1 hour before the workday is done, about 5 in the afternoon, he went out and found still others standing around. He asked them, "Why have you been standing here all day long doing nothing?" "Because no one has hired us," they answered. He said to them, "You also go and work in my vineyard." When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first." The workers who were hired about 5 in the afternoon came and each received a denarius. So when those came who were hired first, they expected to receive more. But each one of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. "These who were hired last worked only 1 hour," they said, "and you've made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day." But he answered one of them, "I'm not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous?" So the last will be first, and the first will be last. This is a thick story. There's a lot going on in this parable that Jesus tells, and we're going to skip over some of the things that we could maybe talk about another day, and we're going to key in on what we think is the key issue here. Ultimately, this is a story about whether you're going to trust in the goodness of the God above you or compare yourself to the people on either side. Will you look around or will you look up? And one of the things I get to do in this phase of being a dad is I get to coach my kids' sports. Right now, Carson is playing baseball, and I have been his coach for the last number of years. I'm going to show you a picture of our team. We just finished up our season this last week. There's our baseball team. These are my boys, and they are adorable, and they are not the best baseball team, okay? So we're in a league where my team is very young, and some of my guys are pretty decent, but they do not compare to the players on a lot of the other teams. And so we have lost a lot of our games this year. And so the last couple of weeks is kind of the end of the season, and we had one game about a week and a half ago, and we had a couple of boys out of town, so we're down to 8 players. Now, at this age, they play with 10 players in the field. Most of the teams have 10 or 11. We're at 8, so we're at a serious disadvantage. Like, I'm teaching them different shifts based on who's hitting, and it really feels like there's kind of no way we're going to win. But the game was close. Like, we'd actually kept this one close. And we get to the bottom half of the last inning, which, if you don't know baseball, that means this is your last chance to score, okay? Last chance to win. We're down 3. I think it's like 10-7. And the bottom of my lineup is up, and so I don't don't have high hopes. But the pitcher walks my last two hitters, who aren't great hitters, good kids, not great hitters, walks them both so they're on first and second. My leadoff guy strikes out. My son comes up, Carson, bats second in my lineup. So Carson comes up, 1 out, 2 runners on, down by 3, and the count gets to 2 strikes, and the kid blasts a shot that goes further than any hit I've ever seen him hit. He hits a stand-up double over the left fielder, 2 runs score, we're down by 1. He steals third. He then steals home on a passed ball, ties the game. Long story short, couple more batters. We score 1 more. We win the game. It was incredible. It was like the best. Yeah, you can cheer for him, man. It was awesome. It was so great. So then it's like, man, we're going to ride this moment, and we got 2 more games next week. This was this past week, and we got destroyed in both of those games. So, sometimes life doesn't work like the movies, but nonetheless, that's what we did. And so it's fun. It's a lot of fun to coach these boys in baseball, but it's also a little bit of chaos. I mean, they're like 8 and 9 years old. Some of them, I got like 1 or 2 10 years old. They're young dudes, and so it's just kind of always this motion and movement, and they're like herding cats, And so you know how it is at practice and at games, and when we really need to have kind of a pep talk or after the game, we'll always get down. I'll put my hand out, and they'll put their hands out, and we'll do our little mantra. But before we do our little mantra cheer, I want to talk to the boys, I want to tell them, here's what you're doing well. I want to tell them, here's what you need to work on. But it's hard because I can't get their attention. They're like chirping at each other. Well, you should have caught that. Well, you should have caught this. Well, I want to pitch, They're like worried about whose hands are on top of the pile. It's ridiculous, They're looking at each other, trying to sort of compete for silly things, and I just want their attention. And so one of the things I say most often as a coach is, hey, ears right here, eyes on me. I want you to think about this parable, and I want you to think about the questions that it's asking us to ask. Has God been good to you? Or have you gotten an unfair deal? Is he being good to you right now? Will you trust in his goodness? Will you steady your gaze? Will you focus your attention on the goodness of God? Let's just get to the heart of the question of the question. Is God good? That's the question for today. That's the question I want to leave you with this morning. Is God good? I got to tell you a little bit more about my family. I know I tell a lot of stories about them, but especially as the week goes on, I just miss my people. You know what I'm saying? So Carson may be my athlete, but as I've told you before, Claire is my angel, all right? She is the sweetest thing in the entire world, and she always has been. I still remember there was this time, she was probably 3 or 4, probably 3 years old, and we went to the doctor's office, and I can't even remember what we were doing. I think it was a chiropractor, and she had a little necklace that had a picture of Cinderella on it. So it was a cute little bead necklace, and the doctor says to her, "Oh, Claire, who's on your necklace?" And she says, "Cinderella. He's in a movie with Prince Charming." And the doctor says to her, "Oh, that's fun. Do you have a Prince Charming?" And I kid you not, she said, "Yes, his name is Michael." Oh, like my heart was literally melting on my shoes, you know what I'm saying? And that's my daughter, and she's just the sweetest thing ever, and the first 3 years of her life were just her and her mommy and me, and then dun, 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 Carson arrived. And if you ask her, her life has never been the same. She still talks about the first 3 years of her life as this if there's some sort of like idyllic golden age of peace and harmony, And I'm like, I remember those years as you trying to put your hands in electrical sockets. So we have different memories, but it's funny. And so they have a pretty good relationship, and they do love each other, but they do get on each other's nerves. At one time, a couple of years after the Sweet Prince Charming story, we were staying at some friend's house on vacation, and we had our kids trying to take a nap. I think she's probably about 5 or so. He's probably 2, somewhere in that range. And we had like the monitor so we could hear them, so we put them to sleep, and Beth and I are in the other part of the house doing something, and we like hear surprising things in the monitor. And so we're like, what is going on? And so we kind of key in a little bit, and then we walk over to the door and we listen. And one part of this is not surprising at all. My son is making the most annoying noises he can think to make. How many, I know Jonathan talked about like big and little siblings yesterday. How many of y'all are little brothers? Or any of you guys little brothers? Yeah. Like, let's just be real. You guys are pretty good at making annoying noises, So Carson's literally like, and then he'll pause, and then he'll say it again, just over and over and over. That part we expected. What we didn't expect was Claire's response, because he would make his annoying noises over and over, and she was just saying over and over, as a little 5-year-old, hashtag make it stop. Hashtag make it stop. It was great. So funny. So again, they do love each other, but they do annoy each other. And over the years, They don't just annoy each other. That happens for sure. But what's worse is they compare with one another. Doesn't even matter what it is, all right? If one of them gets something, could be anything. The other one is saying, why didn't I get that thing? They will count and compare everything. If you have siblings, you know what I'm talking about. You get this. And if you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about too. Like, if you want to start World War III, take two young siblings to dinner, let one of them order a Coke and make the other one drink water, okay? Like, it will be over before it starts. And here's the thing, like, the more they compare, the less they enjoy. My grandmother, God bless her, dead soul, R.I.P., she was great. She would always do this thing when we were kids where when it was one of my sister's birthdays, she would bring me a gift. Or when it was like my birthday, she'd bring them a gift. Like if it was a birthday party, one kid's getting most of the gifts and the other kids are getting one gift from grandma. And like I know, a classic grandma move, you know, and I know that her heart was right, but I think it was kind of a terrible move because she's essentially teaching us to say, well, what's in it for me? Well, I know they're getting something, but what am I getting? And again, sweet woman, trying to love us well. But the problem is, the more we compare, the less we enjoy. Does this remind you of Jesus' story? It's important not to underestimate how serious this issue is for these day laborers to get work. It's not about like extra gifts on your sibling's birthday. It's not about whether you get to drink water or soda. It's like, do I have enough money to take care of my family, to keep my house, to pay my bills? It's necessary. This is a serious thing for them, and so it's great news when they get work. Like, this is awesome. You're going to pay me a full day's wage for a day of work? That's great. Like, they're kind of at the mercy of the people who hire them. And there's no laws or unions, protecting their rights or whatever, and so they're super pumped about this when it starts. You're going to pay me a full day's wage for a whole day of work? This is amazing. Great. And then it comes to the end of the day, and all of a sudden that joy turns to frustration. Wait, how much did you give them? The more you compare, the less you enjoy. And when it comes to a life of worship, a life of following Jesus, a life of doing kingdom work, I cannot tell you how much joy you will sacrifice by comparing yourself to those around you. And one of two things is going to happen. Some of y'all are going to compare, and it's going to feel like it's working for you. You're going to think you're better than those around you. It's probably appropriate to admit this in some of your cases. So you sort of approach a relationship with God with what a friend of mine calls life raft theology. You guys have heard the like silly game where people say to friends, okay, all four of us are in a boat with you and you can only save three of us. Which ones are you going to save? You know, like that kind of thing. Or if everybody's going to die but one, which is it going to do? I don't know if you guys ever asked this question to your parents, but it's a terrible thing to do to your parents. Hopefully they say, we would die and save you all, you know. But we play these silly games to kind of think about who matters most to people. Some of y'all, whether you'd ever say this or not, like that's how you think about life with God. All right, God, if I look at me and my group of friends here, or me and my youth group, or me and my peers, clearly if we were all in a boat and everybody was going to drown except for one, you would save me. That's how some of you think. You think that you're more spiritual, more godly, more talented, whatever it is, and it's really about the more than them. And here's the thing you need to understand. The result of this game that you're playing is less joy. Others of you ask the same question, but you come up with a different answer. You do the comparison game, but in your mind, you lose. You're looking at this going, well, I bet God probably is choosing his favorites, and if he's choosing his favorites, he's definitely not choosing me. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's the family you came from, maybe it's the habits that you formed, maybe it's just that you're not the type of person that has the skills that people notice. Maybe you're not good with words or whatever it might be. I don't know, but for whatever reason, you look around and you say, man, I'm just not as good at the God thing as them. I guess maybe this just isn't for me. And the result is less joy. And the answer is to stop looking around and look up. Can I level with you guys? The unfairness of God is really good news. The unfairness of God is actually his goodness on display. Look no further than the cross. Yet look at the cross. Look really closely at the cross, because if you look closely at Jesus bleeding for the otherwise damned, offering forgiveness to all by grace through faith. You will see a God who gives to people more than they deserve. You will see a God who pays a full day's wage for an hour's worth of work. You will see a God, as you've heard this week, who wants to include all of you, so stop looking around and look up at this God who will undergo whatever is necessary to bring salvation to you, to bring rescue to you, to bring liberation to you, no matter the cost. You will see a God who is, has been, and always will be good. Good to everyone. Good to you. Y'all know the phrase, better than I deserve? Do you know anybody who says this? Like, you ask them, how you doing? And they're like, oh, better than I deserve. It's probably someone my age, probably like a guy my age. And no offense, if some of you, men my age say this, it's fine. You do what you want to do. But I've always found this kind of annoying. How you doing? Better than I deserve. Whatever. I don't know why it gets on my nerves, but it does. But here's the thing. It's annoying. It's a little bit cheesy, but it's also true. What do I get from God today? Well, better than I deserve. What do I get from God forever? Well, better than I deserve. And I will forget that if I look around. So don't just take my word for it. Today, as you continue to hear and see God working in the lives of those around you in ways that you wish He would work in your own. And as you pretty soon leave this place and go back into your own rhythms and lives and watch God doing things in and through others that you're not quite sure why it doesn't feel like He's doing the same things in and through you. He's involved in others in ways that don't seem fair when you examine your own story. As you see these things, and at times you will see them, I want you to remember that the more you compare, the less you enjoy. I want you to hear the voice of Jesus. Hey, ears right here, eyes on me. And I want you to look up. Steady your gaze. Look long and see that God is good.